Good morning. Good morning to all of you. Well, I'd like to thank CSAIE exhibition for your very kind invitation. Thank you for inviting me once again. I'm going to say a few words about this very important guest. Well, I'd like to thank all the attendees. You know, for me, actually, this is the first time that I've had the opportunity to meet finally some people in presence, you know, after a long time after the pandemic. So it's a great joy for me to see your eyes, although we are in darkness at the moment. But anyhow, this is a major change. You know, I'm extremely glad to be back to a presential meeting after these many months where we had our conversation, dialogue through the screen, you know, through the PC screen. Well, you know, certainly the pandemic will change our lifestyle and our habits, but I hope that you know, these occasions, these meetings, there are a very important chance for us to look at each other in the eyes and to speak face to face. Well, I hope that we will continue having to Bologna as a guest of CSAIE. Well, 1996. In 1996, at gallery, Axis Gallery in Tokyo, there was an exhibition dedicated to Alvar Aalto. And the exhibition was set up by a young architect. And that young architect had only started his profession 1 year before as an independent architect. So differently from many of his Japanese colleagues, Sigheru had quite of an unusual education. He studied in two of the most of the brightest universities at that time, and you know, the Southern California University, and also in New York at Cooper Union in New York. So for those who are not too young here, probably you will remember that for many years the Californian University was a place where a lot of research was carried out, and it was a very bright university. So they used, like, for example, Michael Rotondo and others. Well, they were a point of reference at the international level, and also Cooper Union in New York. You know, Cooper Union, when Sigheru attended it, or you know, at Cooper Union, there was a person that then became extremely famous, but also quite unlucky as an architect, John Ejuk. And his drawings, his writings, his poems, his activity as a professor were a point of reference for many young students. Many young students that were extremely fascinated by his drawings, designs, theories. And many young students decided to attend the Cooper Union in New York, thanks to him. And among them is Sigheru. After the United States, he went back to Japan. And, well, you know, he went to a place where the Japanese culture was extremely lively, and well, Japanese culture was at that time was trying to, of course, go back to the knowledge of the traditions of Japan. So Arata Isozaki, I'm referring to him. And he was a person with who was extremely interesting from the intellectual point of view. And he was also able to work in so many different sectors and both in Japan and out of Japan. Actually, various architects that trained with him had the same characteristics, and Sigheru trained with him. So Sigheru, as we're going to see, has worked not only in Japan, but also out of Japan, and probably really out of Japan. He found the chance to better express himself. And actually, since 1986, at that gallery in Tokyo, he organized an exhibition dedicated to Alvar Aalto. So I'm actually insisting on this point. Because organizing an exhibition dedicated to Aalto, this means, dedicating an exhibition to one of the protagonists of the last century. And I'd like to remind you of the Pavilion of Finland built at New York Expo, where Aalto invented this space shaped by a continuous wooden curve. And so it was something very original and totally dynamic space was created by him. I wouldn't call it organic, but maybe the main feature of that space was that it really really involved people, hugged people, thanks to this shape totally made of wood. And that was also a declaration in favor of this material, the culture of wood that is deeply rooted in Finland. So how to make this attempt by Aalto, to reproduce this attempt by Aalto by using a totally different material, the material chosen by Sigheru at that time. And actually, that was the starting point for an experiment that still continues nowadays. Wood is a very famous construction material, and we know its performance. It is used extensively. Wood can be shaped, but wood also structurally is very suitable as a construction material. So how can we use these characteristics, but using recycled cardboard or paper? So how is that possible? As Sigheru did, he built that construction, but using tubes, columns of cardboard or paper. So how is that possible? How can you join the shape of a column with the shape that Aalto found in wood? So this is for what really characterizes the work of Sigheru up until today. So how can you use such a material, a very common material? And, we live nowadays at a time where everybody talks relentlessly about the need to recycle, don't waste, etc. Actually, these words that we use every day in our daily life, actually these words, well, these words are also linked to the concept of consumption. So, do things die? Do we really consume things? Do things die? And also, well, if you use something, well, does that mean that you are consuming it? So this is the heart of Sigheru work. Well, having to work with these limits, of course, and also the fact that things get consumed. Sometimes we use things, we think that things are dead, but actually they are not. And his architecture also made of paper, made of tubes, paper tubes, which obviously give you some static performance, but at the same time, you need to find extremely refined construction solutions which are not obvious, and sometimes they have never been tested before. So since they haven't been tested before and since they are not obvious, obviously, well, considering that this is a new material, sometimes, well, he's actually using solutions that have always existed. Well, I don't know if today Sigheru will show you the library that he built for a poet. It's a space, like, well, it's squared. The structure is made of posts, so columns made of paper, and well, then there are like some crosses. And how can you join some steel rods with vertical paper columns? Of course, you have to find like a knot or and it is like the upper part of a column. Well, it is subjected to tension, and so he reintroduced this shape, this image. And then obviously the rod. Well, the rod is made like any rod. Well, if you could just insert a cable and pull it, but if you are well, intelligent, like the master Ban, you will see that the rod takes on the shape of all the things that we see every day in all our churches. And then a house without walls. It's a beautiful house. I don't know if today we're going to see it. It's a house made of a large tent that wraps it. So, he uses paper as a structural element. So, obviously, well, if you work on the envelope of a building, you have a different problem. For example, if the envelope is mobile, like a larger tent that wraps around the building that could be there or not in this very modern shape. Here you see something very ancient, something old. So this is the teaching of Shoi movement, disappearing walls, like in the great Japanese tradition. Envelopes are made of paper that we can see in Katsu villa, just to give you an example. So the envelope that in tradition closes space, but actually can transform itself continuously. It can become something different. The search for new possibilities in things, just like what happens with our materials, the materials that we use that then become consumed. And they can be reused for some other purposes, just like for constructions, for buildings. They can change continuously. They can become other things. Well, you just have to design, plan ahead, or design their changes. Just like you can design the use of recycled materials, in the same way you can design the nature of the spaces that we're using, freeing them from conventions. So one of the main and the most original features of Sigheru's work is the fact of getting free from conventions. Well, he is not an anarchist. Well, it's not just for the sake of doing it. It's actually thinking about it, thinking about their nature, the meaning, understanding the meaning, and so also understanding the potentials. Well, today for sure you're going to see the design for Centre Pompidou in Metz. So you will see, this was in 2010, and he designed it for the city of Metz. The Metz project, in my opinion, is a clear proof of the fact that he is a master of liberating from conventions. And you will also see the pavilion of Japan that Sigheru built for Hanover Expo in the year 2000. And he had a double opportunity in designing it. On one hand, the possibility to work together with the engineer that is a very smart engineer of, Fry Otto. So, Fry Otto, the protagonist of tension and lightness, how very light things are able to bear very big tensions and therefore become extremely robust and strong. And this is also what Sigheru does. Lightness is everything, really, but it is also a synonym of fragility. Well, sorry, it's not a synonym of fragility. It is simply not heavy. And very often, being light things are also very resistant, if you think about it. This is actually one of the key thoughts of Fly Otto. And well, it was something fundamental for the history of architecture. And this is what brought Fry Otto to collaborate with Sigheru Ban. And they collaborated for the design of the Japanese pavilion at the Hanover Expo. This is a very large pavilion, 5,500 square meters. Recycled paper and so on. So all the things that I've just touched upon, I've just mentioned to you. So this is a pavilion that obviously required greater constructive skills, the ability to manage construction. And it has very peculiar, very particular characteristics. And I'm going to conclude now. What is really fascinating about Sigheru Ban's work is the fact that he goes towards the limit, but once he reaches the limit of an experience, then he finds an ancient starting point. So a starting point that was already existing, that was already there. And, you know, every time we think that we are inventing something new, actually we have to be aware that invention doesn't exist. So what happens, what changes our way of building, of working, of doing, these are always transformations that go towards a double direction. So these transformations take you up towards the future, but at the same time, they show you the past. All right, so well, so again, another large square building with columns at the end of the pavilion in Germany. Well, something impressive for its very large size. So at the end, what remained? What was there at the end of it? Well, you know, exactly what Louis Kahn said. What was left was the beauty of a Greek temple, the beauty of Parthenon, the beauty of the things that represent our culture. You know, they are simple and they are much more radical, revolutionary than we think. What is the beauty of a Greek temple? Well, of course, the columns, marble, so beautifully shaped, the size, proportions among the different elements. But what really is left, what we remember is that alternating of light and dark, light and dark. And so when human beings build an interval, this is part of our world. Our world is made up of light and shadow, light and shadow.
Thank you so much, Professor. Arigato. I'm so glad to be Bologna. After staying in Japan for 11 months, I chose coming to Bologna for my first trip after this pandemic. Today I'm going to show you my project, and also in the end, I also like to show you my project in disaster areas. I started working in disaster area because I'm disappointed about profession as architects because we are mainly working for privileged people who has money and power. Because money and power is invisible, they hire us to make a monument in order to show off their power and money to the public. I'm not saying that I'm not interested in making monument, but I thought I like to look for the opportunity, not only working for privileged people, but also general public, even people who lost their houses by natural disaster. They have to suffer in very poor condition, like evacuation facilities and temporary houses. I thought this is our responsibility to improve those kind of poor living condition before city are rebuilt. Because earthquake never kill people, but collapse of building kill people. That's our responsibility as architects. So that is why I started working in disaster area. Can I start my slide, please? Thank you very much, Professor Darko, for wonderful introduction. And he pointed out important projects of mine and also important people whom I was influenced. He pointed out John Haydock, who was my professor at Cooper Union. Because of him, I went to United States to study. And also that I designed Alberto exhibition. I love Alberto. I'm very fully influenced. Also, he pointed out Fly Auto. I collaborated for the Hanover Pavilion and others. But there's one more person he didn't know, and maybe he didn't recognize, but I must say one of the most important architect who influenced me was Mr. Emilio Ambas, who is here today. Before I designed this Alberto exhibition 1986, I designed Emilio's exhibition in Tokyo. When I was student of Cooper Union, 1983, I wrote a letter because I admire his work, and also I was wondering how to establish my project, career as an architect. I was really admire. He designed many important exhibitions in MoMA. Also, he does industrial design. Also, he did architecture, which was very smart and also very poetic. Because he was kind of the role model for me, I chose him. I wrote a letter to organize his exhibition, 1985, just before this one. Then he gave me the many opportunity to bring his exhibition everywhere in the world. So that's how I started my career. So without this opportunity, working with him, I'm not here. I didn't create my career as an architect like this. So I'm so happy I can speak in front of him today, finally. So as I said, this Alberto exhibition, because I love Alberto, I wanted to bring his exhibition, but I didn't have enough budget to use wood for temporary exhibition. And also I didn't want to waste such an important material, wood, for temporary use. So I looked for some material to replace wood inexpensively. And that time, fax paper roll was rolled in around the recycled paper tube. I kept it. So I found out this recycled paper tube is so inexpensive. We can make any size, any diameter. Small diameter was used for the ceiling, like Alberto's B-Please library. Larger diameter was used for the partitions. Next, please. Next, please. Next, please. Then I knew the strength of a paper tube. I started testing to use this for the building structure. Next, please. Next, please. 1990, I had the first opportunity to design a temporary pavilion using paper tube. But it was too difficult to get the government permission to use such unusual material for main structure. So the building main structure is in steel. However, all the walls, interior, exterior wall, are made of paper tube, made of recycled paper. There's 330 tubes, diameter is 55, thickness of the paper tube is only 15 millimeter, inside is empty. Some of the tube is bigger, diameter is 120, inside is a toilet. In case you finish with your toilet paper, you can tear off inside wall. Next, please. Next, please. Next, please. Then I had the opportunity to design my own weekend house in order to gain the government permission to use the paper tube as a permanent building structure. So this is the first building ever built with paper structure, and still as clean as this picture, because I have no time to enjoy my weekend. So this house was just built to get this permission. Next, please. And then I built the arch structure. Again, I have to get a new government permission to build this with a new wooden joint. This is 1995. Then, next, please. Then, 2000, Japanese pavilion for Hanover Expo. When I started developing paper tube structure in 1985, nobody was talking recycling, ecology, sustainability at all. But year 2000, main theme of this expo was about environmental issue. So I was only architect who is making the building out of recycled material. So I was chosen by government to build this one. But problem of expo pavilion is always we make building for half year and demolish and create a lot of industrial waste. So my idea was how to recycle or reuse all the building material after building was demolished. So that the paper tube was made by a local German company. As a part of the contract, they have to collect all the paper tube after building demolished to recycle as a part of the contract. Foundation, I didn't want to use concrete because concrete is rather difficult material to recycle. So this is just wooden box filled with sand. Membrane, normally membrane is made of PVC. PVC is not environmental friendly material. So I made a membrane out of paper, waterproof and fire protected paper. All the connection is made of just fabric tape. Next, please. And I collaborate with my hero, Fly Auto, for this pavilion. As I said, it's just fabric tape to connect them. Next, please. This is a nomadic museum. This is a movable museum for the Canadian artist Gregory Cobero. He wanted to make his own museum, travel from city to city, country to country. I decided to use a 20-feet used shipping container as a structure, not because shipping container can travel. As you know, shipping container is international standard. We can find same used container anywhere in the world. So wherever I go, without bringing container, I can find the container locally. So this is in New York. I just spent 3 months renting from local container company. After the exhibition is over, we just returned to original company. And the column is paper tube 10 meter to support the roof. Next, please. And then we went to Los Angeles, Santa Monica Beach. In New York, length was 200 meters, but we just got a small parking lot. So museum was divided to galleries of 100 meters. And additionally, in between space, I just added an additional roof to make a theater space. So museum became twice bigger than the one in New York. Then it went to the Tokyo. As you see, the color of the container is different because this is what I could rent in Tokyo by chance. Next, please. This is a house I built a long time ago. This is called picture window house. The span of this space is 22 meters. By opening sliding door, we can create the big picture window. Next, please. This is a big horizontal picture window framing ocean view. Next, please. This is also the house with a picture window in Sri Lanka. After I walk in Sri Lanka, after the tsunami Sumatra earthquake, one of the sponsors of our project asked me to design the house. The site was very hilly site. I didn't want to cut the mountain, so I made many different platforms. Little by little, you climb up. Then, next please. Then finally, you reach to the living room with a big picture window framing beautiful ocean view. Next, please. Also, I use some existing industrial material for different way. This is a house with the glass shutter. This shutter is normally used for the fire station. I just use for the residential use. In order to connect the living room with the swimming pool, just push button to open the whole window to connect inside outside. Even the small family room, when glass shutter is open, courtyard and the family room is totally connected. Next, please. This is the building for the Swatch company in Tokyo. The whole facade is made of glass shutter, which can be totally open in order to take advantage of cross ventilation instead of depending on the air condition. Also, this is not request from client. Client wanted to have 7 different boutique Swatch company owned, like Omega, Tissot, Jacquet, Blancpain, and so on. However, in this particular site in Ginza, which is most expensive land in Japan, the width of the land is very tight and very deep. So if I have one boutique in front of the commercial street, rest of the boutique has to be the back or upstairs or downstairs, which is not really interesting commercially without direct access to the commercial street. So I want to give them all the direct access from street. So I created a passage connecting front street and back street with some green and water feature. And along this passage, there is a 7 glass showroom of 7 different brand name. Next, please. So this is a glass showroom of each boutique. You can take a look at some latest watches. If you want to see more, you just have to push a button. Each showroom is designed with a hydraulic elevator, bringing the customer to their own showroom. So from this passage, each brand have their own access to their own shops. This is the 5th floor, the custom floor. When glass shutter is open, it's totally become semi-outdoor indoor space. Actually, there's yes, next please. This is another building with shutter. In New York, it's a condominium with a perforated shutter. you can see through because it's perforated. Every floor has the big window called bifolding door, which can be totally open to connect inside outside. This shutter works for the security, and also that this works as a shading for the west sun. Next, please. And when the bifolding is open, this connects to the inside with the terrace. Even the perforated shutter is closed, you can see through. And also this works very well as kind of the mosquito net in the summer in New York. Next, please. This was my temporary office in Paris, built 2004, when I won the competition for new Pompidou Center in Metz. I wanted to make my own office in New York, Paris, but the renting office in Paris was very expensive. I couldn't afford. So when I met the director of the museum first time, I asked him if I can rent the rooftop. I want to make my own temporary office in order to save money. He said it's a good idea if you allow us to bring some VIP guests to show the new Pompidou Center design. We will allow you to use the rooftop. So I brought my Japanese student to work with French student during summer. We built the temporary office with a paper tube, 35-meter long, and width is 4.5 meter. I spent 6 years without paying any rent, enjoying beautiful view of Paris. Only problem was when my friend, there's still there problem. When I have friend visiting me, because we are part of the exhibition in museum, they had to buy the ticket downstairs to see me. That was the problem. Next, please. This is what I submitted for the competition of some Pompidou Center in Metz. This is a map of the city. This is a train station. And our site was south part of the train station, which was totally empty. And the center of the city was the north part of the city. It's a very famous cathedral. This is the model I submitted. There is a 3 so-called gallery tube, 15-meter width and 90-meter in length, stacking on top of each other. Each end of the gallery, there is a big window called picture window, framing view. For example, the top of the tube is framing very important cathedral. Second tube is framing the train station. Because the city of Metz is the east side of Germany, after the war, always city is occupied by German. There are so many important historical German architecture, including this train station. So second tube is framing this train station as a part of the history. The roof is idea come from the traditional Chinese bamboo hut. When I have to decide the geometry to make this structure, I studied like 3 ways. For example, if I divide with square, because square changes shape, so we need a bracing. And the connection become very complicated. If I divide by triangle, it's the most stable shape, no bracing, but always there is 3 element is meeting at the connections. This third one with hexagon, which came from the bamboo hut. As you see, the hexagon doesn't have an in-plane stiffness, but because of a triangle, without any bracing, this is very stable shape. And also, each connection, you can see only 2 elements is meeting. So the joint is very simple. So this is a model. And because this is a tensile structure, I overlap each other in order to avoid making complicated connections. Next, please. This is the completion. Just before the opening hour, the glass shutter is closed, people waiting outside. This is a picture window. Next, please. Next, please. So you can see this is a picture window. Actually, this PowerPoint is dying. If you have some extra. You can see that's a picture window framing the cathedral. This is the center, the core with the elevator hanging the timber roof. Next, please. When I was designing Senpakudo Center, I had another project in south of Korea. This is a golf club house. I use the same geometry. However, this is a compression structure. I can joint by cutting wood like a normal wooden joint without any metal. It can be possible because it's a compression structure. Next, please. Next, please. Just as you see, you have some. As you see that this is like a cathedral, but instead of stone, I use timber. Next, please. This is an office building in Zurich, Switzerland. 8-story. I didn't want to use any metal connections. There's one post with the 2 beams. Perpendicular beam is oval shape. Inserted. Because it's oval, it doesn't rotate. So without metal connections, I can make very rigid connection. Next, please. Thank you. Yes, thank you. So all the structure is exposed. As you see, there are no metal connections. Glass shutter open to create indoor in between space. Next, please. This is a museum in south of Japan, and this area is very famous for the bamboo craft. So I designed the upper floor structure like woven timber, and the main facade is made of glass bifolding door. I wanted to make a museum open to street to connect inside outside. Everybody can come in from anywhere. In good weather, we don't have to depending on the air conditioning. Next, please. So this is when the bifolding is open. There's another lobby on the 4th floor with the pattern of wooden woven structure like a bamboo hat. Next, please. This is the La Seine musical near Paris. This is an island on the Seine. Used to be Renault factory until 90s, and the factory moved out. First project was the Pinault Foundation, the museum. Japanese architect Toda Ando won the competition. However, as you may know, Mr. Pinault had some problem with the French government, and he decided to move the museum to Venice. So he canceled the project. So then the local city decided to make the music hall instead of the museum, and I fortunately won this competition. First thing I had to do was removing concrete pile made by Tadao Ando. Museum, the city wanted to have something very symbolic. Instead of making unusual shape, I made the egg shape for the classical music hall for 1,200 with a sail. Instead of receiving wind, this is receiving the sun. This is the PV panel, solar panel, which follows the sun. So always facing to the sun, generating efficiently the energy, and also creating sunshade for the glass window. This is the LED screen. You can see what's happening inside of the concert hall. Next, please. Next, please. This is the classic music hall for 1,200 seats. And this is a choir. I collaborated with one of the best tile company in Vicenza, Bisaccia. That's a wonderful company. We created special mosaic tile, which change the color depending on sun, from red to green. This is the same tile, but depending on sun angle, the color is different. And the ceiling of the concert hall, this is made of a paper tube. Different diameter tube was used for the acoustical reason. Next, please. This is the museum for the Fuji Mountain. When Fuji Mountain was chosen as a UNESCO World Heritage, local city decided to make a museum. Every competitor for the competition designed the roof like a Fuji Mountain, but I did the other way around. Using groundwater from Fuji Mountain for the air conditioning. After that, it's released the pond in front to reflect the building to create the Fuji Mountain on the water. Next, please. Inside of this, there is a slope. You can climb, enjoying different the view, taking different height of the Fuji Mountain. Then finally, you reach to the pavilion on the top of the building. Next, please. Then famous picture window framing Fuji Mountain. Next, please. Next, please. This is one of the most recent projects. This is a headquarters for Swatch company in Bienne in Switzerland. The shape of the site was this J shape, so that's why this shape come from. Otherwise, I wanted to make the timber structure. There is the solar panels and also the lightweight ETFE membrane, transparent windows. Depending on the regulation of the environment, I chose different materials. And also roof is covering public street toward the Swatch Omega Museum and the conference hall. Next, please. So as I said, the roof is covering public street above the conference hall. Next, please. This is the construction pictures. I'm taking advantage of the advanced technology of timber processing in Switzerland. Each element is cut three-dimensionally, perfectly, so that assembling them is very easy. Some lobby and office space, everything is made of timber. Next, please. So this is a building on the other side. Only the ground floor is concrete pilotis. On top is everything is in timber. Beams, columns, retaining wall, floor, everything is in timber. Next, please. Now we go to the disaster relief project. 1994, there is a big genocide in Rwanda, Africa. Over 2 million people became refugees. And I was very shocked to see the photo above. People are freezing with blanket. I read the article. During the rainy season, Rwanda became very cold because the shelter given by United Nations was so poor, they couldn't keep them warm. I thought you have to improve the shelter, otherwise any medical care doesn't help them. So I wrote a letter to United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees in Geneva, but no reply. I went to there without any appointment. I met by chance a German architect who was responsible for the shelter construction. He had a problem. United Nations just provide them plastic sheet. Refugee has to cut the trees by themselves to make a frame. However, over 2 million people cut trees. This area become deforested. So all the forest is gone. So they have to go much further to cut more trees. And this become very serious industrial problem. So that the United Nations decided to provide them aluminum pipes. But aluminum is very expensive material locally. That's why refugees sold them out for money and they cut trees again. So that's why giving aluminum didn't help anything. That time I proposed making shelter out of recycled paper tube. That's why I was accepted as a consultant to develop this idea further. Next, please. So this is I built 3 different prototypes. I got some the help from a famous furniture company, Bitola, in Switzerland. As you know, the Bitola has the building designed by famous architect all the campus. And my shelter became their cheapest collection. So this is the result. Also, I want to design something more comfortable. However, because of United Nations policy, we are not supposed to do them something too comfortable because they have to go back to home as soon as possible. So I got only $50 per unit. So this project was in order to stop the deforestation. Next, please. 1995, city of Kobe in Japan, we had a big earthquake. There's many Vietnamese refugees in Kobe. They are gathering at this Catholic church, but all the church was fired, destroyed by earthquake, and they are having morning service in front of the fire, and I decided to support them. Next, please. I visited their place. They are living in a park with a blue sheet tent. And the rainy days, inside become totally wet. And the shiny days, inside temperature become over 40. It's very unhealthy condition. Also, local Japanese people try to kick them out because they are afraid. Park is becoming like slum. But they have no place to go. So I decided to make a temporary houses with a paper tube and also plastic beer crates with a student. We built 50 units with student. Next, please. Then I was asked to design the temporary church, only 10 meter by 50 meter. And everything is made of the student. And they was supposed to use only few years, but because this building became a symbol of this destroyed city, so they kept them for 10 years, using for the music, concert, wedding, so that this place became very important symbolic place for this city. But after 10 years, city totally recovered, and they decided to rebuild a new church. And that time there is a big earthquake in Taiwan. We decided to donate this church in Taiwan. Next, please. So this is in Taiwan. This became permanent church and community center. Then I was thinking, what is the definition of a permanent building? What is a permanent building? What is the temporary building? Even building made in concrete in the big cities, developer buy the land, destroy the building to put a new building. So that even building made in concrete can be very temporary if building is made to make money. But even the building made in just paper, if people loves it, this can be permanent. So that is my definition. Permanent building can be made by anything, even paper. As long as people love it, it's become permanent. But all the building made to make money, they are commercial. They are temporary building. Next, please. 1999, there is a big earthquake in Turkey. I was asked to build the temporary houses. Every material, paper tube, beer crate was donated free from local company. Children help us to put waste paper inside of paper tube to make wall more insulated. Next, please. 2001, west side of India, there is a big earthquake. Even paper tube was available locally. And the only thing I couldn't get is a beer crate, because this area, nobody drink beer and nobody drink alcohol. So local Indian architect suggested me to use a red Coca-Cola case crate, but I thought red Coca-Cola case is out of context. We made the traditional way of making foundation with mud. Some of them become house, some of them are used as a school. Last year, I got a photo from local architect. This structure is still there, used as a local clinic. Next, please. One in Sri Lanka after tsunami created by Sumatra earthquake. This local fisherman's village was totally destroyed. I went to there. I made the house with locally available mud brick. We built 50 of them. Next, please. 2008, Chengdu, India, Chengdu, China. There's a big earthquake, over 30,000 people killed. Especially many of school collapsed, killed the children. Also, I started building temporary house immediately. Local government didn't want any foreigner to build temporary houses. But however, I met the school master. She needed some classroom because school was destroyed. So I brought a Japanese student, worked with a Chinese student for 5 weeks. We made 9 classrooms over 500 square meters, but just by student with paper tube. Next, please. So children are very happy because they can come back to their original school. Next, please. 2009, L'Aquila, Italy. As you remember, the city was totally destroyed. And because I knew that this city has the music school, also Philharmonic Orchestra, but there are no place to play. So I proposed the temporary music hall, and the mayor gave me the land. But I had to do the fundraising by myself. Japanese embassy in Rome helped me. As you remember, do you remember him? Mr. Berlusconi. Originally, he wanted to bring G8 summit to his island, but he decided to bring G8 summit to L'Aquila finally, suddenly. And the Japanese embassy organized a press conference of 2 Prime Minister of Japan and Italy with my model, and Mr. Berlusconi hold a paper chip. I know he doesn't know what he's holding. However, because of this successful press conference, I got €500,000 to build temporary concert hall. Next, please. So this is a temporary class, the music hall. I didn't want to make a concrete wall. However, the acoustical effect is very important. So I made the structure with scaffolding with a lot of sandbag inside to protect the sand. And outside the paper chip structure, inside the paper chip is just used for the acoustical reason. This is opening concert. This temporary music hall still exists in L'Aquila. Next, please. 2010, Haiti in Caribbean Ocean. This island, left half is Haiti, right half is Dominican Republic. there was a big earthquake in the center of the capital of the city, Port-au-Prince, but no airport was available, so I had to fly Santo Domingo in Dominican Republic, driving 7 hours to find out the city is like that. So there is no material available, no volunteer available, so I made a team in Santo Domingo, bringing the material to train the local people to build a temporary shelter with paper tube and plastic sheet. Next, please. 2011, northern Japan, big earthquake, tsunami, nuclear problem. People have to evacuate to the gymnasium. There is no privacy. People suffer because there is no privacy. So I decided to make a petition to give privacy. Next, please. So this is just simple paper tube inserted with the curtain, giving the private space for each family. Next, please. However, the official people didn't accept my proposal because there are no example before. But I didn't give up. I went to 80 facilities, and 30 of them finally accepted to make this. Now, every year in Japan, flooding, typhoon, so I go there to make this petition in evacuation facility. Even Camerino, near Abatorete, 2016, there was an earthquake. Also, I went to there. And the same, always official people react same. I was rejected. But actually, the lady who was in charge for this gymnasium, her son studied architecture in Columbia, New York. She called his son, and the son was so mad. Mommy, you kick out Sigheru band. He is doing very well. The next morning, I got a phone call from her. He said, "Please come back," and she prepared the place to make the temporary partition with the mayor was ready also. Next, please. Then also that after the 4 months, people have to move to the temporary houses. But the temporary house built in Japan is so poor, no privacy, and the leaking, and always you can hear the noise of next door, no storage. And also some of the area doesn't have enough empty land to make enough temporary land. So I proposed the 3-story temporary houses built with container. Next, please. So this is made of the shipping container, but it's a checkerboard pattern. Inside of the container is a children's room and a bathroom. In between space is a living dining area. Next, please. 2016, in Philippines, there is a big earthquake and typhoon. Paper tube available, and also the screen in bamboo was available. And in Philippines, there is a big beer company called San Miguel. I asked them to donate a beer case. They rejected. So finally, I had to use the Coca-Cola red crates. Next, please. 2005, Nepal. There was a big earthquake. I made the wooden frame with a brick locally available from a destroyed building. And also I made the school out of the stone with a wooden frame structure, which I tested in Japan to meet the Japanese earthquake standard. Next, please. This is the last project, 2011. 2 weeks before earthquake happened in Japan, there is a big earthquake in Christchurch, New Zealand. And I got the email from the priest. He read some article. There is a Japanese architect who designed the temporary church free. So I said that if you are using this temporary charge not only for the religious service, if this is used for the public, I will design free. So while I was working in northern Japan for earthquake, I also commuted New Zealand. First thing I analyzed this cathedral with there are many geometrical rules with a golden section. I use the same rule for the new building I designed. Next, please. This is the paper cathedral for 400 people with locally available paper tube. And the foundation is made of shipping container as a kind of office and changing room. This became the symbol and the tourist destination of New Zealand, Christchurch. And I'm sure this is going to be also permanent. So I like to continue building to be loved by people. Grazie.
In teoria.
Well, in theory, the lecture is over. But actually, if you have any question, if you want to ask questions, we still have time. My feeling is, well, that probably you want to ask questions to the great master. Well, otherwise, if you are shy and you don't feel like asking questions, well, again, if you don't feel like asking questions, have a beautiful day. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you, Sigheru.
Grazie mille.